Welcome to Wholesale Change, the webcast and podcast from Distribution Strategy Group, where we provide thought leadership for wholesale change agents just like you. Because if you are on this show, you are probably a wholesale change agent. The astute audience member will notice that I am alone today. I'm without Ian Heller, my trusted business partner. And so I'm just going to brag on Ian for a second, because he usually does that in a way to me that embarrasses me. And what I want to say about Ian in his absence is that he is absolutely the smartest guy in the room. And anything good I learned about distribution, strategy, or marketing, I learned from Ian Heller. So thank you, Ian. We will miss you today, but we've got a terrific show lined up. And the topic today is from industrial to electrical. We're going to be talking to Summit Electric Supply CEO Ed Gerber as we get his take on a new market after many, many years in industrial. I'd like to welcome Ed Gerber to the show. Ed.
Hello, Jonathan. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, it's great, Ed. We had you on before when you were president of ISA and when you were in that world. And so now we're going to talk about the new world that you live in. But I think for the benefit of our listeners, it would be wonderful to really hear the story of your career, including the time in industrial and in manufacturing, and then we'll move into talking about Summit and some of the transition you've seen going from industrial to electrical. So let's hear about your background and your history.
Sure, absolutely. So I started in industrial distribution right out of university with a really small family business, actually in York, Pennsylvania, called Petrie Amaro. And I think I might have been their third outside salesperson at the time. And industrial, for everybody who's listening in that space was more of the metalworking, abrasives, lubricants space. So that industrial marketplace. So I was an outside salesperson, didn't know anything about cutting tools or abrasives whatsoever. I think it was like 23-ish, 24-ish. And I started with that family company. They hired me and grew into that. And the interesting part there was that was a small company that had a flagship line in the cutting tool space. And we actually ended up becoming one of the largest single branch locations for the flagship line. That I stayed there in the outside sales role for about 10 years. And then I moved into the very last stint was president of the company, actually. So I went from a non-family member, very, very young, and ended up being the president of the company when in the early 90s or mid 90s, really, the roll-ups of industrial distribution started to happen. That was kind of a phenomenon that was taking place back then. And a company was formed by 9 original industrial distributors, and they created a company, a public company actually, called Industrial Distribution Group, IDG.
So that's how you got to IDG then? Okay.
That's how I got to IDG. So that was happening. We were still an independent, family-owned business, independent at that time, Petrie Amaro. But what they did then at that point, they went out on the acquisition trail. And one of the first companies they bought was the company that I was with, Petrie Amaro. And as part of that transition, they made me president of the company. I stayed there to help them with the integration. We moved some facilities, moved from the warehouses. It was a fantastic experience. And then during that process, the flagship cutting tool line that I talked about, that we became one of the largest single branch locations for, they recruited me into their world. So now I jumped from industrial distribution, working my way up from a salesperson to the management of the company, now to the manufacturing side. So I moved to Chicago. And Precision Twist Drill might be a company that people might know. It's part of the Sandvik Group of companies. And I was executive vice president, sales and marketing for Precision Twist Drill, which then morphed into some of the German brands. We did a multi-brand strategy, and how do we leverage the best, good, better, best product offering within the distribution space within the country. And that gave me exposure now to all the distributors in the industrial space, and developed some really long, in-depth relationships there. Did that for about 7 years, roughly. And then during that time frame, IDG went out after 27 more acquisitions while I was gone. They recruited me back into IDG to run one of the regions, and I became the Northeast region manager for that company to help continue to grow that. At that point in time, IDG, still being a public company, went private through private equity. And through that process, the private equity group asked me to become the executive vice president of sales and marketing for the overall company of IDG. So that's how I moved up through the ranks within IDG, did that for quite a while. And then myself and the executive team, we positioned that company. We really did a great job growing the company, both top line and bottom line. And we sold the company to Sonopar in 2014, I believe, at the end of 2014. And Sonopar at that point owned another industrial MRO company called Hagemeyer.
Right.
And what they wanted to do is to get scale by taking Hagemeyer and taking IDG, blending them together. And they formed a new company and rebranded the company as Valen. So the Valen company that you see outside today had its genesis through that journey that I just talked about. I believe Sonopar sold Valen since then, maybe in the last 12 months or so. But that's kind of my journey through that. So as that took place, I stayed with Hagemeyer / IDG for about a year. And during that time frame, our trade association, ISA,
Yes,
asked if I would come in and help them reposition the organization to more of a forward-looking future, looking perspective, and recreate the value prop for the trade association. And I was able to do that. So I came from distribution to manufacturing with all the distributors, back into taking 27 locations within IDG and forming them as one company, selling and positioning with Sonopar, now back into Industrial Trade Association, where now I was able to leverage all my relationships with the suppliers, all my relationships with the rep agencies, and all my rep relationships with distributors, and being able to help ISA reposition itself. Did that for about 5 years. During that time, that's when I met Vic Jury, one of the shareholders and owners of Summit Electric, and he asked me to join his first board that he was putting together with outside directors. And I definitely did that. Saw that as a great opportunity to learn that space and help Vic and Summit succeed from a board perspective, and did that for about 4 years. Then through a recent change of the CEO, the board asked if I would come in as president and CEO for Summit Electric, and I've done that. I'm going on almost a year right now. So I started officially on the payroll December 1st, but was kind of already in the mix in November of last year. So that's kind of my background and journey on how I got here.
absolutely amazing. So would it be fair to say that your P&L leadership has come from a path primarily through sales and marketing as opposed to?
Absolutely. Yes. So my whole orientation of my mind, I would call it that, is very bent towards customer facing, sales and marketing, and how to drive growth through an organization. So that's kind of where my whole career has been coming from.
And you really had a tremendously successful run at IDG, right?
We did, absolutely. Yeah, so in that space, so IDG is a very interesting story. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned there, but I would say in the time frame that we were in under PE, we more than doubled the top line growth, and we tripled the EBITDA of the company. And through that process, we also re-engineered the whole entire company to be more towards a service and solutions offering. Recognize very early in that although transactions are very important, and that's what pays the bills, how you do the transactions and how you bundle that with services, it really is the difference. And we re-engineered the company and was able to do that. And that was primarily the growth engine for the organization that enabled us to be attractive to Sonopar. And then that, as well as our ERP platforms and our supporting software platforms towards that, allowed us to do that. So yeah, IDG was just an amazing experience on how to retool, reposition a company for success. It was a great ride.
And now at Summit, without revealing dollars, I know that you've really had a nice pop in growth there. Why don't you actually, before we talk about that, I want to say two things. First of all, audience, we love questions. There's a Q&A button in the bottom of your screen, and definitely we'll try to answer the questions. But Ed, if you would, tell us who Summit is, their position in the market, geography, product lines, and then we'll do the big reveal on the tremendous growth that you've had.
Sure. So Summit, a little bit about Summit. Started back in 1977. There were original three founders of the company. We're a family business and independent. I would say a proud independent. Exclamation bold font, right? We are located in New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, and Louisiana. So that's kind of our markets, are the markets that we serve. We have a heavy concentration as well in the oil and gas market. So you think about the Gulf Coast. We take a look at our market segment. We think about commercial, industrial, and residential. We're less than 10% resi. And the balance is 50-50 on average between commercial and residential. We have 24 locations across that footprint that I just described. We also have an EP&C, engineering, procurement, and construction business out of our Houston location. And we also have a marine division out of our New Orleans location. So it gives you an idea, the footprint, number of locations, the type of businesses that we're in. Our customers are the commercial contractors. We also have industrial OEM and the commercial side of the business as well. So that gives you a little bit of an idea who we are. Our product lines that for a typical electrical distributor is what we call switchgear.
Okay.
Large switchgear. We also have pipe, wire, and fittings, and conduit. That kind of commodities. All the lighting that goes between that, and everything in between that product portfolio is the types of products that we sell. We have a sales force. We also have a service and solutions division, kind of like business development, that's looking at ways to provide the product to our customers in more of a logistics play, a supply chain solution play. So instead of getting just a transaction, to get the whole customer by demonstrating to the customer, how they can save money and do things better through a service and solutions play. So that's a little bit about Summit and who we are.
Fantastic. Well, for our audience, your owner, the primary owner, Vic Jury, is one of the giants of the industry. And so, right. So you've been working with Vic as board member and now as CEO, and taking this company to new heights. And the growth since you've been there, percentage?
Yeah, from a percentage point of view, through last month was 58% over prior year.
My goodness.
Yeah, so we've experienced a tremendous growth over prior, and the drop through obviously to the EBIT, it's just as powerful. So yeah, it's been a fantastic 2022. Now I will say that in the electrical space, electrical distributors, it's no better time than now to be an electrical distributor. If you think about what's going on in the marketplace, right? Electrification of everything, and all that's going on in the world. So we just happen to be, not only am I really a proud, independent that's doing all the right things, but we just happen to be at the right time, at the right place. And Jonathan, if you think about the markets that we're in, right? Think about New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, Louisiana. People are leaving other parts of the country, right? And they're looking for more friendly places to live. I'll just say it that way. And we just happen to be in the best markets as well. So not only are we in a great space at the right time, but we're also in the best markets, I believe, in the US. So all of this is coming together. It's really helping us win, but there's lots of other reasons why we're winning as well. But there's a lot of wind in our sails from a market and timing point of view.
It makes sense. Phoenix is a huge boom town. I presume Dallas is growing pretty quickly as well. Dallas.
Yeah. So, our Phoenix marketplace, Phoenix is the 6th or 7th largest commercial construction in the country.
Wow.
And then if you think about Dallas and Houston, they're like number 1 and 2. And so combined, I mean, we're just in the fastest growing markets that you can be in, and we're located in those markets. So, I'm actually broadcasting out of Phoenix here today. We're in our brand new, what we call a service center, 85,000 square feet. It's just a gorgeous facility. We opened up another facility just down the road as well. Actually, we're here doing our open house. So we're bringing all the customers in, and our suppliers are in, and just generating all that, that energy and excitement for this marketplace. So, like, once again, we're just the right locations, right time, doing the right things in the right way. And it's just making a big difference for our business.
So the part of your business that deals with industrial is probably familiar to you in terms of the customers that you dealt with in a prior life. This bigger journey in your life of 30 years in industrial to now a few years in electrical, talk about what has informed what you're doing in electrical from industrial. Talk about perhaps where there are important differences in how you would run a company. This is a big, broad, open-ended question. I'll let you run with it.
Yeah, that's we can go so many different ways with that question, but how could I best way to describe it? So coming in, we'll say that coming in. Obviously, I have 33 years in the industrial space, a couple of turnarounds. Very familiar with suppliers, customers, pick, pack, and ship, discipline, and all those things, margin discipline, pricing discipline, business development. There's a lot of similarities between the industrial space and the electrical space. And the way I describe it to people, about 80% is similar.
Wow.
And 20% is remarkably different. I will say that. So, one of the things I've learned over my career working in different companies is you want to take the experiences that you have from your past experience and apply it in a way that's respectful to the current company you're in, but you have to learn the current company, the dynamics, the culture, the customers, and how they're different, right? So
because if you run the exact same playbook, you're probably not going to get good results.
Absolutely, right.
You have to be thoughtful about how you apply the old playbook to the new scenario. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, just a really simple example in that. So in the industrial space, I would say a majority of what's sold can fit in a 70-pound UPS box. Right. Think about that for a moment, right? And then in the electrical space, there's flatbed trucks delivering, pipe, wire, conduit, and there's massive switchgear that's going in. The order size is very different from an industrial average order size to electrical. So you have to walk into that with eyes wide open, right? And really understand the business, how this business is managed or run on a daily basis, and the customer interaction and their expectations. But I would tell you, separate from that, having the margin discipline, and how do you make sure you have margin discipline, and how do you think about price increases in a proactive way? How do you drive sales growth and sales accountability? How do you have an efficient operations? There's a lot of similar business acumen. The difference really is the customer and the product portfolio is different than what it is in electrical. So coming in, I had to really step back and make sure that I took the opportunity to really learn the business first. And that's what we focused on heavily. I mean, early in, one of the things I wanted to do was to sit down with we have about 620 associates in the company. And I wanted to sit down with as many as I could. I actually sat down with 400 in the first 90 days. And my goal there was to understand, what did they see as opportunities? Don't touch this because it's really working, those kind of things. And the other side of it is, hey, if we could just do this as a company, my gosh, we can be even better as a company. So we spent a lot of time really connecting with our own associates. At the same time, we did the same thing with suppliers and outside in perspective, and also with customers. And then that allowed me to kind of identify a few things that we really needed to do to get things right. So long story, and we can go multiple different tangents as you would like, but a lot of similarities. I would say 80% similar, but 20% is remarkably different.
In the industrial world that you lived in, was it mostly branch-based, mostly DC, combination?
So interesting. So there was a journey there.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, it started off as very branch-based. Then over time, at least the IDG model anyway, over time, it became hub and spoke, kind of DC based, where we would have locations in markets that needed to have a customer presence and where the sales organization can call home, if you want to call it that. And then we would have kind of like the custom inventory and maybe A and B items that are loaded in that marketplace, but the hub would have all the inventory, and there would be kind of a hub and spoke kind of organization. That's what we morphed to. But I would tell you at the same time, on the industrial space, there's lots of independents that didn't have that model, and there's lots of independents that have the brick and mortar with full operating independent branch locations that works as well. So it's really, I wouldn't say that one model was the answer for industrial. It really depended on what you as a company, your value prop was, and what model you need in order to fulfill your value prop. And the value props are very different across the different industrial distributors.
Whereas in electrical and in construction and in general, it's almost inherently branch-based, right? You have an option. You have the options you just described in much of industrial.
That's right.
Either hybrid or branch-based or DC-based, and almost inherently in construction, it's branch-based.
Well, it's a very local customer. It's all local customers, right? So having that presence in that market, the relationships in there, you go to baseball games with them in the morning, you go baseball games with their friends and family, etc. It's very much there. But I can tell you though, some of our facilities, we have some very large facilities. The facility I'm in right here is 85,000 square feet. It's brand new. It's a beautiful facility. And we have some larger facilities as well, of course. But we operate kind of in certain locations, a hub and spoke model. So some of our branch locations aren't big enough to house all the inventory that you could possibly have, right? So we actually feed it from the larger locations as well, where it makes sense. So yes, it's about the local presence, about branch-based business, about connecting with the local community and the customers. But we also take a look at how can we, from a logistics play, manage the inventory in the best way in order to provide the best inventory needed for same-day delivery, ultimately, for the local branches, by leveraging some of our larger warehouses as well. So it's not as crisply defined maybe as a DC, but we do leverage that where we can.
What would you say about managing a sales organization in this model, which is more branch-based with perhaps some will call stores as well, versus in industrial? Is there is the locus of control different somehow in this world than in the industrial world that you came from?
There are a lot of similarities, actually.
Okay.
It's not as I wouldn't say that's in the 20% remarkably different space. Okay. So for the way we operate, our model is, so when I first came in, one of the things in talking with all the associates, one of the things we learned was, hey, a lot of decisions seem to be centralized. And we're a proud independent. One of our value props is the ability to be flexible and nimble and act quickly. Right? So what we did was reorganize the organization through regions, trying to get the decision-making as close as we can to the customer. We believe that's definitely a strategic advantage for us in order to make that happen. I mention that because the way our sales leadership is organized is they're in a geographic market, typically aligned to a branch that reports up to a service center manager, now that reports up to a regional vice president. And now you have that accountability and the local decisions happening in a time frame where we need to act in order to win the business, right? So that it's more of a decentralized approach for us,
Mhm.
while making sure that we have best practices through a process. So the way we look at us, we have 3 regions, 4 regions today. We're going to 3 regions today. So through an RVP, and they have full P&L responsibility, the sales leadership all the way through it. However, we have what we call process leaders going across, making sure that we have best practices across the organization. So we manage the sales organization
Hmm.
through a best practice point of view, while giving the local leadership the ability to execute on decisions in a way that we can best serve the customer. And that's how we manage it today.
So you mentioned the word P&L. So your RVPs have P&L.
Absolutely.
That's unusual. That's amazing.
But yeah, they have full P&L responsibility. They need to manage it as business owners. We have the P&L not only in a region, we have P&L down to branch location. We have P&Ls pretty much for all aspects of our business. And we manage it through not only a margin, but an EBIT approach as well. So we want to make sure everybody is tuned in into how to make money as a distributor.
And as part of this radical growth that you've achieved, I'm guessing that there was some restructuring in your management organization. I'm curious if you could just take us through where you ended up and perhaps why on that organization.
Sure. Yeah. So, I would say, if you take a look at what did it look like, call it a year ago, what does it look like today, right? So a year ago, we had 25 locations reporting into one person, big bottleneck. And then we had what was called an executive leadership team, right? So we think about executive leadership team, think about, HR, IT, finance, all the way through that. Today, how we look like is a regional organization, 3 regional RVPs, decentralized with decision-making through process, best practices. So we actually reorganized the whole entire branch, brick and mortar sales organization and operational structure to support that.
Mm-hmm.
And then my executive team is fairly new. So we brought in a brand new CFO, a brand new CHRO, a brand new VP of Ops. We have Sheila Hernandez, which probably people in this marketplace really know well, who's in our VP of Marketing. We have Mike Oftenbrink, who's our CIO, that was already there. So we actually took the opportunity to really strengthen the group that reports directly to me. And we did that intentionally, because we felt that we needed to have, for lack of a better term, a rock star organization that was really connected to the marketplace and is 100% focused on the next step for Summit. So not only are we looking at how do we just, get the productivity out of the organization, but where are we going to take the organization next? So big changes from the regional structure and big changes from the executive leadership, which we call process leadership team, in order to get us there. And we're actually in Phoenix today. The whole team is here actually focusing on our 2023 plan. We're actually going through all of that as we speak as well. So pretty exciting changes from a leadership point of view. Pretty cool.
Well, I think as we know, often the leadership team that gets you to one level may or may not be the leadership team that gets you to the next level. So as you are clearly taking the team to the next level, you're making the appropriate changes.
That's right.
We have a question. Can you please describe the digitization of your customer contact, e-commerce? How has the pandemic affected outside sales? So those are 2 separate questions. One is about e-commerce, and the second is about outside sales, how pandemic affected it.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. So, do we have e-commerce? Yes. Do we have a website that people can go on and take a look at, SKUs and do a market basket and place orders for that? Yes. Does a lot of our business come through that traditional shopping cart on a website? No. Do we do punch outs? Do we do EDI? Yes. So I would say where we are right now is a very traditional way of thinking about digital. Where we see digital going next is something very different. Okay. And we're actually investing in people to lead our digital strategy through the marketing group in order to do that. There's lots of different ways how people define digital. Mm-hmm. So I would say it's a small part of our business today. We do see that the digital play through marketing is a way to bring in new customers that we don't know today, to have a better onboarding experience, for customers to be able to have a very, it's very cliche, an Amazon experience, but in all seriousness, customers should be able to do everything on their mobile phone and understand where everything is as it's happening. They shouldn't have to go to a laptop if they don't want to. And we're looking at how do we position ourselves to go down that path. So I would say up until this point, we've operated pretty much what a lot of the distributors have looked at digital. Through the pandemic, I wasn't here in this seat through the pandemic, but through the pandemic, we continue to call on the customers. If the customers wanted to see us, we continue to call on them. If we didn't, it was WebEx and Zoom meetings, just like we're doing here today. But it has definitely changed the way customers see the benefit of digital interactions as being a possibility of how they can do more business in that way. And we just see that's an area that we have to just lean into.
Very interesting that you mentioned this. Our listeners, if you've tuned in, have heard us talk about really how the shopping cart should be de-emphasized in a lot of situations. And we use the point guard basketball analogy, where your e-commerce site could generate an assist to EDI or to punch out or email or branch, or it could go ahead and score by taking it through the shopping cart. And we did an analysis, Ed, actually, I'll send this to you, called The Real ROI of E-com. And it was by a company, the company that we looked at by most standards. If the standard is shopping cart revenue, it would be considered an unsuccessful effort.
That's right.
The problem is that they're looking at it only as shopping cart revenue, because what we found was that the people that shop, meaning research, evaluate, assess, the people that make visits to the website a lot, even if they're not putting it in the shopping cart, they are much, much bigger buyers overall offline than those who don't visit your website. So I think, and this is something that's really starting to emerge in electrical. They're probably a whole swath of your industrial buyers. There's almost no chance they're going to put stuff in a shopping cart, because that's not how they buy, right?
That's right. Yeah. So, it's not a B2C play. It's a B2B play, right? So you just have to think about it being very different. I also think, digital can do a lot of things and outside of the buying experience. It could be, how do we set up our value prop in a way that the customer actually cares? So when they go visit your site, is there a journey that takes them through the journey? Can we guide them to help them in order to take them to where they want to go? It may be places they didn't even think about before, right? What about for employee attraction and retention? What do we look like? How do we feel like? What's our story that would attract people to come to Summit, whether you're a customer or whether you're a potential hire for our company, right? So we're looking at the website and other vehicles as being of such strategic importance. We got to get it right. I totally agree with you. The e-commerce play, as far as just getting browser activity, that somebody is looking for a fuse and they happen to go on our website and they saw a price and they clicked it and pick, package, ship. That's going to be part of that. There's going to be some of that for sure, but that's not what digital means in its entirety. That's a very small part of what it means. There's a lot more that goes there. So I like your analogy. I think there's a big part of it that's an assist to the organization. And that's what the website needs to be. It could be a customer that's trying to figure out, maybe they're just looking for something, but really what they want to figure out is a logistics play. And imagine if there is our site that actually guide them through the process and the thinking process. And then imagine if there's infrastructure behind the scenes that could actually, once they want to talk to somebody, that's designed to take them through the rest of the journey. So we're looking at the digital as being the stickiness to bring them in, and then it'll help us with the assist to carry it all the way through. And that's how we're looking at digital for the company.
Actually, let's talk about assist for a second. I noticed you went to Western Ontario.
Yes.
Are you Canadian?
So I'm American from birth. I'm an
Okay.
Army brat. I was born on an Army base. My wife's Canadian, and I
Okay.
grew up in Canada. So I did all my schooling in Canada and university, and I left, I think, when I was like 23 or 24 to come to the States.
Got it. Because assist means one thing to Canadians who are hockey fans,
Yes.
different thing to Americans who are basketball fans or perhaps hockey fans. So
Yeah. Assist to me means 1 point, and a score means 2 points, basically. Yeah. So yeah, I hear you.
good. Well, so on the subject of culture, what are you doing, or how have you thought about creating what are the elements of a winning culture at Summit in terms of the beliefs, messaging, structure, and as it applies to different stakeholders? Certainly your employees, but also your suppliers and customers. Let's talk, if you could, about culture and how that plays out for stakeholders.
Well, that's a deep question. It's interesting. So one of the very first things I did, actually, because I'm on the board of directors as well, so I'm a director, so I'm a managing director, right? So one of the things that we did right off the bat, before I actually got into the organization in this current role, was just land on 3 simple statements, and we wanted to avoid as much corporate speak as possible. So when you think about culture, you think about mission, values, and all that other stuff, and it can get lost very quickly in corporate speak. And what I find is the best thing you can do is have your associates be able to tell their friends and family at the dinner table what the culture is, what it means to them. And if you can do that in the most simplest terms, you have a true opportunity to bring everybody with you on the journey, right? So when I share with you our 3 taglines, you're going to go, wow, it's pretty simple stuff, but it's really powerful. So what we use,
simple's good. So go ahead.
Simple's good.
Yeah.
Very, very simple. Some of it, I'm sure it's not unusual to many people, but number 1, we want to be the best place to work. Easy to say, hard to do. Number 2, we want to be the easiest place to do business. Everybody says it, easy to say, hard to do. And then we believe if we are the best place to work and we are the easiest place to do business, we absolutely can be the customer's number 1 choice, because our associates are going to be just excited to be here. And it's super easy to do business with Summit. Why wouldn't I do business with Summit? So we focus on those 3 lines. So everything we do in this company is tied to those 3 things. If it can't move the needle on those 3 things, we don't do it. So we're highly focused on what that means. So from a culture point of view, we're doing, most companies do an engagement survey. They always do. We do that as well. And it's really interesting now that the easiest place, the best place to work, easiest place to do business, customers number 1 choice. The associates are focused now on best place to work, and they go, how can we become the best place to work? So now we're getting all this feedback. Okay, we just completed our engagement survey. We're going to see the results of that. We actually had a great response rate. I think we're up to 90% of the people completed the engagement survey, which from an organization point of view,
that's amazing.
Those are high numbers, right?
Yes.
So, through that, I'm sure there's going to be things that are constructive criticism, which we absolutely encourage. So what we're trying to do is give our associates the comfort and the confidence that we want them to tell us things in a safe environment. So all my leadership team are wired in that way. So we think about culture, the voice of our associates absolutely matters. So we encourage that, and that's part of being the best place to work. Listen, and then it's also about what is our leadership team doing to coach and mentor and succession plan? Because the second part of a best place to work is, what's my career path? How am I being developed? Where am I? Does my supervisor really know who I am? And are they helping me on my journey in life? So it places a lot of expectations now on leadership. So leadership means something very different for us now when you start leaning into what is the best place to work mean. So it starts to create this expectation of how we do that. So best place to work, easiest place to do business, customers number 1 choice is driving our culture. I'd also say from a culture point of view, we're an independent, and I can tell you that runs through the veins of everybody here. So there's a lot of pride of being an independent distributor and being able to zig and zag and make decisions and have an entrepreneurial spirit. That's part of our culture too.
Tying back to what you said earlier, you met with 400 people in the first 90 days. It sounds like immediately, not that it didn't exist previously, but if it did exist, it was taken to a new level, a culture of listening.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Listening with no repercussions to the other person who's sharing. I think that's the key thing. One thing is to listen, but it's to create a safe space. And then it's not about executive leadership. It's not about me. It's about the company. And I think once people understand and can trust that you're like that, it's easy to say it, right? It's really about trust and how you carry yourself. But we're developing a culture here where people really feel encouraged to really share some thoughts, whether good or bad, in a way that can help the company go forward and move the needle for growth. And that's really cool to see that start to happen. So again, early in, all this is happening within the last year or so. But I can tell you, you can feel it, you can feel the energy, you can see the momentum, plus the success is there, right? So from a top line and a bottom line perspective, the success is there. So all this energy is really coming together in a great way. So yeah, absolutely.
We have a great question here, which is, to what do you credit such a high engagement in your survey response with employees?
Good question. It's kind of part of our culture. So somewhat from a culture point of view, we believe if we're going to do something, regardless of what it is, it's not a check the box deal. So we're anti-check the box. That's our leadership culture. So if we choose to do something, we're going to see it through to the end. So, I've been in other companies where engagement surveys is kind of like an annual thing, and you manage it through email. It's done. That's not what we do. So when we do an engagement survey, yes, we put it through email, but the way we've connected the dots on the engagement survey is we don't have any individual names. We don't know that. We want it anonymous. But what we do is we know what the engagement rate is by location. And then what we do, we're very active. We reach out to the location manager. Say, hey, you're at 43%, or great job, you're at 98%, whatever it might be. And we're saying engagement is a reflection of leadership. See, but remember, higher expectations of leadership, right? So we're saying you as a leader, you should want everybody in your organization to engage, because the more voices we have, the better we can do at doing the right thing for the organization, not only for our customers and suppliers and shareholders, but also for our associates. So we manage it all the way through. And that's the reason why we're getting the engagement results we're getting. So we're very hands-on in making sure that we get all the voices that we need.
So you actually could say, Houston, we got a problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Or Houston, we don't have a problem.
That's exactly right. We don't have any problems in Houston, but that's a good analogy. Yes. Yeah. But I guess the point I'm trying to make with you there, Jonathan, is we all have limited time, and we have limited time. Yeah. We can't be blowing the ocean all the time. So we're focused on what are the few things we're going to do, and we're highly focused on let's do it right. So when you have that mentality and the culture through, whether it's an engagement survey or whether it's something else, you have a tendency to get maybe better results than what you would do without that approach. So
terrific. Well, Ed, this has been an amazing story and an amazing journey, and we wish you only the best as you take this company to the next level. It's going to be exciting to watch. Wanted to share a couple things about upcoming topics with our listeners. On tomorrow, we have Mike Marks, who's going to be doing the second part in the series on CRM. So the first part that we did a couple weeks back was, I would just say, more descriptive of what's going on in the industry. The second part is really more prescriptive about how you can have success with CRM. And that's going to be brought to you by Proton.ai and by Epicor. And then our next episode of the Discerning Distributor with Alex Jazowski is going to have a guest, Samantha Jones, VP of Revenue at Rocket Shipping. That is brought to you by Oracle NetSuite. That is November 3rd. All of these are at noon. Thank you again for listening, and have a wonderful day, everybody. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.